Theodore Bikel would seem to be a man for all countries. He was born in Austria, grew up in Palestine, was trained for the theater in England, and has established his reputation as an actor and folk singer largely in America. Though he starred in such productions as Sound of Music and Fiddler on the Roof, Theodore Bikel is principally thought of not as a star, but as a character actor of many guises, on the stage, in the movies, and in television drama. And that's but one side of a man who was equally at home as composer, author, photographer, political activist, and of course as a folk singer. His concerts, he does at least 70 a year, are usually sold out. His book, Folk Songs and Footnotes, was published 10 years ago. Mr. Bikel, you've said to the press at any rate, this is an adopted country, meaning America, an adopted country for me, so I jealously guard its liberties. Coming from another country and becoming a citizen of this country as your adopted country has given you, I suspect, a greater awareness of the liberties that perhaps we take for granted.
Yes, because I know the pitfalls that exist in other countries, and I know that the lack of liberty that does exist, and I know that it's a very small step occasionally to a semi-totalitarian or totally totalitarian point of view and a way of life.
Which is by way of saying that it can come in subtle ways where we may think it's a long way off and it's not a long way off.
Well, it's already in a sense has begun to come. We have been witness to attempts insidiously or invidiously to take away certain of our liberties and from the highest instances.
Is this what has caused you to be unusually active for an actor and a singer in political affairs?
You mean? No. My political activity has always been at the surface, as well as under the surface, because I'm a political animal. I can't help but be one. I don't believe that my role as an actor or as a performer exempts me from the duties of citizenship or from the joys of living, for that
Nor
matter.
does it compel you, I suppose, to do that sort of thing.
No, some people would have you believe that it does, because there are people who believe that an actor, especially one who acts on the Broadway stage, ought to be slowly graying at the temples and be pleasing to all mankind. I found out long ago that if you try to please everybody, you really please nobody at all, least of all your own sense of dignity, and that's in the last analysis what you have to live with. So it doesn't really matter. It may very well be that 20, 30, 50 people stop buying tickets or records or whatever. But that's all right too. That's all right too.
You were born in Vienna in a time before the Germans, the Nazis, moved into Vienna. What are your recollections? You left Vienna when you were what, about 10, 11 years old?
I was 13.
13. So you have some recollections of the Vienna before the Nazi putsch.
Very vivid recollections. It was a kind of a charming city and a happy-go-lucky, easygoing type city with underlying, and even then I could discern and I knew about it. I also knew about it because, you know, as living as a Jew, even as a Jewish child in a basically and fundamentally hostile environment, which is what Austria was to Jews, despite its occasional bursts of friendliness. One couldn't help but be a little leery of one's surroundings. But it was, of course, before the Nazis marched in and gave a legitimacy to people's prejudices and hatreds, quite a pleasant place to live in.
Were you, was there an anticipation of that, or did it come suddenly?
to some it came suddenly, and it was stood in direct relation to the degree of their assimilation. As they were more assimilated to their surroundings, as they pretended to themselves and to the world around them that they were Austrians rather than Jews, so it hit them harder when it turned out that after all they were only Jews.
Yours was a small family. You were the only child, I understand.
Yes.
And in what group did you fall then, with respect to your attitudes toward this?
Well, my family has always been intensely and very proudly, perhaps you might call it, aware of roots and background and antecedents.
Heritage has been important to you.
Very much, very much so. My father saw to it that I learned Hebrew before I learned anything at all, in a structured way. This Hebrew teacher came to the house when I was 5 years old. I didn't even start to go to school until I was 6. And besides, we had literary evenings. My father read in Hebrew and Yiddish at the table. So we were aware of that. And I'm still to this day convinced that the flexing of ethnic muscles, of culturally ethnic muscles, is a prerequisite to keeping these things alive. I mean, any muscle that isn't exercised atrophies and dies. The same applies to cultural activities. So you have to.
And it was this, I suppose, these deep roots that caused your family then to go to Palestine rather than somewhere else in the world when the Nazis did move in.
Sure. I mean, there was really no other place that we wanted to go. And rightly so, I do believe. We arrived, I remember, on the shores of what was then Palestine on the first day of the Jewish New Year, 1938, and in the harbor of Tel Aviv, which isn't really a harbor in the accepted sense of the word. A harbor, you can pull right up to the, whatever that thing is called. I'm not very good on nautical terms, but the harbor of Tel Aviv was such that you had to throw out an anchor somewhere offshore and be taken off in little boats. So that was my first experience.
What was your first impression?
Oh, I was so excited that I didn't have a first impression that was dispassionate and therefore too observant, because of the excitement of actually being there, of hearing the language spoken live, and of having, you know, Jewish sailors take you off in a little boat and bring you to a land that promised to be your own. It was an extraordinary experience.
I talked with someone who visited Israel for the first time recently and came back remarking on this person was Jewish, remarking on the fact that everyone, even the garbage men, are Jewish. And when you grow up in a different culture, I guess the fact that everyone that does the ordinary work is Jewish is a bit of a surprise to him.
Yes, and I mean, you also have to then realize that, but everybody is. That includes not only the policeman and the fireman, but also the burglar and the arsonist.
I see. Was it in then Palestine, with such a conglomeration of languages? You say you grew up speaking Hebrew, Yiddish, and German to begin with, and then going to Palestine, that led you to want to be a linguist?
Oh, absolutely. I have that kind of a facility for languages. I studied French as well, and I went to a school, a high school, which was in the humanistic tradition, which meant Latin and Greek. So there was a good background for languages, and I at one point really toyed with the idea of being an academician, a translator, whatever, you know.
Of course, this has been very useful to you in the profession that you ultimately chose, in both acting and singing, I'm sure.
Yes, very much so.
But aside from the practical value of knowing whatever number of languages, my sources seem to vary from 6 to 8, so I suppose
it's really 7.
Right. Aside from the practical value, is there an intellectual value, do you think, from your own experience?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, there are turns of phrase which really don't translate too well, and also you must realize that at times it's nicer to be able to understand what the guy said in the original version rather than having to wait for a middleman. I recall in the early days in Palestine, as it was then, when you went to the movies and you saw a picture which was, for example, in French. Then on the body of the movie would be English subtitles, because that it was, after all, a British mandate, so they subtitled everything in English. There were English subtitles on the body of the movie. And on either side of the screen there were strips. On one side there was a Hebrew translation, on the other one an Arabic translation. They weren't always synchronized with each other, so one line could get 4 laughs at different times during the running of the movie. And it, you know, it was a funny experience. Also, I must tell you, recently I've had occasion to represent the United States as a delegate at the International Federation of Actors at various meetings in Paris and Stockholm. And they work with these earphones the way the UN is with instant translation. The official languages of the IFA, or FIA as it's known, are French, English, German, and Spanish. Now, even including Spanish, which I understand better than I speak, I really know all these 4 languages. I never used the earphones. And they said, we never had an American delegate like that before. How come you don't use the earphones? So I have to.
I've often wondered if our dreams are, as Jung has said, our connection with mankind's history and reveal all the symbols that have been built into mankind. What language do you dream in? English wasn't the first language. It's been almost a later language, has it not?
Well,
or had you?
The answer is really, it's probably a playwright's answer. Whatever the character speaks, that's in my dream. That's what I dream in. Yeah.
You worked on a kibbutz for a while, and then you quit that, and you went into, and finally into drama in Tel Aviv. First with a theater company there that, with which you apparently became a little disillusioned and left and formed your own company.
Yeah, you did your homework. Yes, the Habima Theater, it wasn't that I was disillusioned with the company, because it's a great theater, really great theater, and they're to this day all very good friends of mine. I was disillusioned with the fact that custom dictated at the time that you had to sit around for what seemed to be eternities before you got your chance to actually act. Oh. I was in the theater for 1.5 years before I got my first role that had 29 words in it. And they thought that was rather forward, and that I should be grateful and shut up for another couple of years before asking for yet another role to play. And I somehow didn't think that was right, that I thought that both my intellectual and artistic development was a little faster than that. And I might have played a role that perhaps could have 31 words in it right after the 29 word. Curiously enough, the 29-word role was in a play called Tevye and His Daughters.
Oh, really?
And I played the constable that came to throw Tevye off the land.
Yes, and then of course Tevye became one of your starring roles later in Fiddler on the Roof. You found the ideal solution, founding your own little chamber theater company, in which you played, I suspect, most of the roles, or at least all kinds of roles.
Oh yes, all kinds.
And then you went on to study at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, and there broke into professional theater in England. Part of this, I gather, was through your friendship with Peter Ustinov.
At first, what happened was I finished the academy in record time. I may say I was there for 4 terms instead of the usual 6. And then they usually have a play or several acts from plays at the end of the term, and all the agents come to that, and producers, whatever not. And I started to get job offers, and I started to play in what was regional repertory there. Then I did a play on the outskirts of London, sort of off-Broadway type. You Can't Take It With You is what it was. And Michael Redgrave saw me in that and told Laurence Olivier about it, and Laurence Olivier was casting A Streetcar Named Desire at the time, so he asked to see me and did, and I started. He gave me a role, a small part in Streetcar, then I graduated to play Mitch and Stanley, whatever not. And then during that time I met Peter Ustinov, and we became friends, and he had written a play called The Love of Four Colonels, and I played the Russian colonel in that for over 2 years.
That was the longest role you had, was it not?
I guess so.
Yes.
Longest consecutive time of playing in a play. No, although Sound of Music was almost as long.
Was it?
Almost as long.
Then you did, of course, come to New York, your first visit here, I suspect, and played in what?
Well, they brought me here to do a play called Tonight in Samarkand, which didn't run, but I got very good reviews, especially from Brooks Atkinson, who was then the drama critic of the New York Times. And so we, from one thing led to another. Then I did The Lark on Broadway with Julie Harris. And then I went to Hollywood and did a number of films, television, whatever not. And then along came the Sound of Music, which again ran almost 2 years.
Which you played the lead opposite Mary Martin. Yep. And the reviews keep making reference to the fact that even when you starred opposite Mary Martin, you were more or less unobtrusive. You've played such a wide variety of roles, character roles particularly. Do you pride yourself on being more or less unobtrusive? And the reviews have all been highly favorable to you.
I don't know that I'm unobtrusive. But I guess what they really meant when they said that is that they couldn't find Theodore Bikel in the role. They found the role, which I do, and I, in a sense, take a little pride in the fact that I let the role take over rather than... there's two kinds of actor. There's a personality actor that no matter what name you give him, whether you call him Charlie Smith or whatever, or Bill Jones, or even an Albanian name that's unpronounceable.
What we usually think of as the star.
Yeah, he's always the same. He walks the same, he talks the same, he doesn't change his gait, his accent. It's just yet another role that he plays, and that's the personality actor or the star, the movie idol, whatever. There's the other kind of actor who likes to research his character, to lose himself in the role, to do what it is, not that he would like to do, but that the role would like him to do. And in terms of accent, in terms of bodily attitudes, etc., etc. Those are the things. And so from that standpoint, yes, unobtrusive, not intruding as Theodore Bikel into the role that I'm playing.
We have so little time left, and I've not even mentioned the matter of folk singing, which is another career with you, of course. One that came rather late, did it not, since you've made your first solo concert in 1958.
Came late in terms of a career, not that folk singing didn't come early.
But you have done it for many years.
Many years, all the time. I've always sung, except that, you know, we live in a society that won't tolerate you doing anything well without forcing you to make a career of it.
Yes, I see. What's the reason for the tremendous revival of folk music in recent years?
Well, it's gone down again. There was a tremendous revival in the early 1960s, and then it subsided somewhat, not anywhere to where it was before the big fad. I suppose the reason was really that it was part of the rebellion. At least I put it down to that. I may be wrong, and sociologists will probably have differing opinions on it, although I'm sure some will agree with me.
Folk music is the music of rebellion.
No, it was a rebellion against the mechanized society.
I see.
The mechanized society, the impersonality of the machine age, where suddenly a whole body, especially of young people, said that's not good enough. We want to do our own thing, and we want to do it ourselves. We don't want to be other people to be not only our entertainer and our entertainment, but to be people for us. That to live vicariously through other characters, and to solely have your own in front of the television set or whatnot. You want to do it yourself, and in terms of music, that means play it yourself, sing it yourself, dance it yourself, folk dancing. That's why it came out. Sure, it's also a tool of rebellion, and that had something to do with it, and the emergence of black consciousness had something to do with that. But basically, I think it was a rebellion against mechanized society.
Why are folk singers almost invariably liberal and oftentimes political activists?
Well,
there are no conservative folk singers.
Because it seems, and now I'm sure we're all going to, you and I will both get a lot of letters on that, is that it is that the conservatives speak from a lofty perch, not necessarily from the people and to the people, and not in an intermediate, an immediate way without the need for translators or middlemen. Conservatism is constantly in need of middlemen, and liberals, at least they like to think of themselves as not needing any, of springing directly from the people. They don't always make it that way, but folk music at least personifies that kind of attitude.
You sing folk music in more languages than you speak. Again, I've got a number as high as 16 and perhaps 18.
It's 21.
21, all right. Are certain languages more suitable than others for certain types of songs? I think, of course, in romantic songs, somehow they sound better in French than they do in German to me. And I mean to be a little more sophisticated than that. Are there certain songs, certain languages that
I would say certain songs or certain languages are conducive to certain moods. If you feel in a really languid and melancholy mood, I'm sure you would find a Russian song that immediately springs to mind. I must say, however, that even a language that is as guttural and on the face of it perhaps unappealing to the Western ear as Dutch, will have great cadence and great beauty, and I've known that too. So one can't really make class judgments on these things. But I would go by mood rather than by language.
I see. So if you're trying to create a mood, you might very well choose a song in that particular language.
In that mode.
And the sadness of the Russian song is not just the stereotype.
No. It actually
really
exists.
It does exist.
It exists. There's a great deal of suffering even in the midst of joyous love.
You've said sometime in the past that in folk singing, part of your work is in listening to the folk singing.
Sure. Which used to be very difficult because you used to have to go into the field and seek out all kinds of toothless 89-year-old workers in the field who would sing to you, and you would have difficulty understanding exactly what consonants they made, although you get the melodic line often. But it's easier now because of the advent of the tape recorder. If you don't go with the tape recorder yourself, some scholar went before you, and you can exchange tapes with him.
I suppose these songs do go through mutations, don't they, in generations?
Sure. Sometimes inadvertent mutations because somebody misheard something, and then it just became part of the folklore. There's an American song that says, coffee grows on white oak trees. Now, coffee doesn't grow on oak trees to begin with, right? That song started out as saying, coffee grows on white folks' trees.
I see. And the change was inadvertent.
Absolutely. Somebody misheard it and just perpetuated it.
Yes. Now, in addition to being an actor of considerable distinction and a folk singer, you've done a number of other things, including being a photographer. And I don't know if the story is apocryphal or not, that someone gave you a camera as a present and you became a photographer.
Somebody forgot a guitar where I lived, and I became a folk singer.
Right?
That's
one
true.
must be careful what one leaves around in your presence.
That's right. Please don't leave any guns. Yes, that really is true. Somebody gave me a small camera, and I decided after a very short time that I wasn't going to be a snapshot type of guy. Funny, I am more or less that now because I have small children, so you can't resist the temptation of taking snapshots of kids. But at first, when I had the camera and I was single, I was really looking for the photographic thing to do rather than...
But you're almost driven to do these things and do each of them well, not simply play with them in a desultory sort of way, but do them well. Yeah. Is this because you feel that in a sense time is of the essence, that there's so much time and that it must be used?
Often that is it, but perhaps in another sense, because I really don't relish doing things badly. Or in a mediocre fashion.
Well, somewhere I saw a reference to the fact that you said that I was brought up to believe that sitting still is a sin, and you sound, and certainly your life has demonstrated a devotion to a large number of things, and all of what you do.
And with all of that, very sedentary things. I sit an enormous amount of time. I sit on planes, on trains, I sit in an office. You know, one sits more than one does other things. But of course, sitting
You
still.
resent this?
Oh, yes, sure.
You want to be active?
I would like to be, but I'm not. I'm a sedentary kind of a guy, except not in the mind. Not in the mind.
Not in the mind?
No.
You do an enormous amount of reading, I would assume?
I try to, yes. For that reason, I welcome trips on the Penn Central Railroad, and only for that reason.
It has been said that you would one day want to run for Congress. That was said some years ago. Do you still feel that way? Would you like to get actively into politics?
No, I don't think so. I know that I could run, and I know that I could win. I know that for a fact because I ran for office once before. I was an elected delegate to the Democratic National Convention in Chicago in '68 and received the highest number of votes in the entire state of New York, which my detractors put down to the fact that I'm known for other things besides politics, and I put down to the fact that I'm politically very aware. But I know that I could run and win. The question is, would I really deliver in terms of my own life and my own lifestyle, and would I do the best thing that I know how to do for the most amount of people? And I'm not convinced that that necessarily would be so. I could do a creditable job as a congressman, I suppose, but I would have to perforce leave behind other things.
Which are valuable. Which
are very valuable. I think that they are valuable. You cannot, funny things, you can only be one thing without leaving it behind and become a legislator as well, and that's be a lawyer. From any other profession, you have to take a bill of divorcement, at least for the duration of being a legislator, and perhaps forever.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bikel.